Alright, so this is a writing I did called Age Aggression, Generational Envy and Influencing Insecurities. It's a delve into horror and human behavioral psychology, as well as sitcom gilded glazing and the generational gaps or divides considered, or in my case, reconsidered. It's two parts, and so the first part is existential angst. So, part of the 1980s line of campy B horror movies is that of the 1981 Allison's Birthday. Story to the film is a classic satanic panic tale, a secret intergenerational cult preying on a groomed youth on the behalf of an ancient deity who possesses the body of a 19-year-old for some 80 years or so, then the rite of reanimating this possession repeats. In the end, it's like Freaky Friday. The adolescent Allison wakes up in the body of the woman who had gone through such decades prior to her, as her own younger vessel is then used as replacement. It's a longing, age-regressive instinct, it would seem, in celluloid form. It's similar to a more recently released movie, The Substance. The 2024 body horror bit shows this vampiric longing for the sort of youthful rejuvenation to the point of conscious auto-cannibalism. And the main character losing her entire person in the introspective split attempt at batting away nature's road to inevitable death, wherein it differs in portrayal of this fear of aging as the plot to steal Allison's youth is completely unbeknownst to her, while Sue steals her own fate knowingly after being told and experiencing consequences of abusing the reincarnating drug she takes. In the end, though, both succumb to this, one's life stolen, the other frantically eaten through in the averting attempt. Thematic contents and concept not necessarily given in the same light. However, the human denial of death is evident. As one ages, they get consciously closer to that encroaching and unavoidable end date. Mortality salience, as prescribed by terror management theory, would go to explain this as a wholly natural one. Biologically, like any other animal, a human has an innate drive for survival, paired with an evolved intelligence and subsequent overactive imagination. Combined psychological posit, as well as a movie in the same vein of 1980s B horror flicks, the reverse snuff film Frankenhooker takes from the average interpretation of the tale and adds more of an element of human grief into it, as a man resurrects his decapitated sister with the pieces salvaged from exploded prostitutes. A likenable Ship of Theseus scenario furthers this idea is Season 3, Episode 15 of the grandstanding, all-referencing series Supernatural. Antagonist to the monster-hunting siblings in this episode is that of a 19th century surgeon who achieved a sort of form of immortality by replacing any ailing ligature or organ of his own with that of those surgically stolen from younger and healthier specimens. And so with that accumulated explanation of the parable, this ill perception of age and envy of youthful energy and time ticking down to the grave coalesces into a generational animosity. In all the given theatrical examples, it shows up as an idea of some form of perpetual reincarnation. In Allison's Birthday, it's notable that the age of reanimation is in that of a 19-year-old switching with a 103-year-old. Being revitalized in a fresh body, the eldritch entity is able to exist almost ad infinitum, regenerating eventually to when is generally spoken in hindsight as the good old days of age. Then rinse and repeat. It starts again. That was the first part. Then the second part is absurdist insecurity and reconsideration. So, The Office was a sitcom originally set in the UK, but more famous in and due to its American variation. Ideas spanning the base material, as well as 9 successive seasons of the American variation, is that of a mockumentary about one select branch of a paper company and all that ensues within its walls and lives of the employees. Weddings, cruises, bears, beats, Battlestar Galactica, the camera captures it all. Much to the surprise and initial dismay upon realizing just how intimate the recording over the years had been as the show neared its finale. In that finale, capping off the 9th and last season of the sitcom as a whole, miniature monologue delivered from Cornell grad and by that point former Dunder Mifflin employee Andy Bernard, played by Ed Helms, expressed a sonderful sentiment saying, quote, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them." After presumably having seen up to then in the series as had consistent viewers and people who had checked out the documentary, or because in the series it's a documentary that was released. So then, largely contrary to my own prior espoused opinion on the matter, it would seem that the concept of generation has a sense to it beyond comparison to wishy-washy astrology. Astrology is a concept which curates people into broadly defined categories based on certain traits shared. Generational differentiation does the same. A bracket, the segmented portion of people born during a certain era with conscious connection to and development within it. And as a result, an averaging of produced behavioral outcomes and emotional outlooks categorized by such a label. Like any broad stroke of a brush, it isn't all-encompassing, however largely stereotypical, at least environmentally. So, as seen within generations are its own groups supporting the idea, shell-shocked soldiers, roofie ruminating revolutionaries, to angry aesthetic terrorists and marginalized ordinary, everyday school shooters to emos, hipsters, and groypers. What results in people's development then rubs off and updates to the environment for every successive youth group. Essentially, it would seem that the issue is almost, or would be, that influence and its impact onto the younger members of the population. Older ages laid their moral musings, insecurities, and baggage for the upcoming generations to sort through succinctly. Insecure baggage levies down as hysteria characterizing eras. For example, the creation of the atomic bomb made groundwork for induced fear for lost futures. The economic collapse of the complete collapse in everything for Germany that led to the rise of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, gave rise to the Hitler Youth, yada, yada, yada. Emo, everything. Anyway, so, gaps in the eras, and as a result, worldly outlook, it seems a reactive instinct to opposition of inculcated baggage, both good and bad, of those raising them. And as such, they raise their children in differentiation to experienced adolescent rearing ills, until nonetheless this is repeated by their children and their children's children, and so on. The seeming result to this in the grandparental generations is a more negative broad stroke painted on the youth, as well as vice versa, for being either weaker, lacking in some sort of ethic, having been more coddled, essentially lacking in what they, in fact, seem to be raised lacking, some qualities of existence which led them to their older age and place in the world. And with that, it takes two to tango, procreate, and continue the ages, so on and so forth. Envy based on age and projected animosity, as a result, is and likely will always be a present conversation to continue. From the younger ages, this envy is in response to lost, ruined hopes and futures, and perceived ease of experience with those of older eras, like the Gilded Age or post-World War II boom, and envy from the older generation for seeing the changes in their lifetime in abundance or ease of access to things that the youth seems to be coddled with and made soft. And they're both correct on their assertion or projection in varying degrees. They're both correct. They're both right, but they're also both wrong. So uniquely, then, it is when the generation becomes older. There's sort of this. There's a reminiscence that goes along with the negation of natural age. It's a wariness of the progression The past is often painted over with this sort of primrose gleam and longing daydreams. Come then declarations of the good old days, like Andy Bernard talked about. Glorified and gilded segments of time, a fetishized revitalization, fueling both generational ambition and projected aggression. And ensuing from this is the sense of nostalgia, despite if what is remembered is glossed over. Because really, a powerful dopaminergic drug nostalgia can be, like with Andy Bernard in The Office stating his own sense of it. When was it really? Throughout the course of the show, his character routinely is put through the blender. An engagement failed as a result of being cheated on with a fellow co-worker. Constant rage bait from his peers. Losing his job and family fortune in swift succession. In other words, would those really be the best days of his existence? Likewise, this can be taken to a personal autobiographical interpretation, as well as to a now incredible common phenomena of individuals of youth being nostalgic for times they themselves never even existed in. And with that, that's my writing called Age, Aggression, Generational Envy, and Influencing Insecurities. Yeah.